Welcome to Pixel Composer tutorial. In this video, I'm gonna cover the displacement node. You can find it in a filter and warps. Here you will see the displace node. Or you can just search for displace. That's probably the easiest way to do it. This node will take two surface in and the displace map. For this example, I'm gonna use a basic line as the input surface. Right, you just connect it to the surface in. The general concept of displacement node is it will basically just shift the pixel position around. You can provide in the extra surface in the displace map to tell each pixel to move differently. And the variety here will allow you to create some interesting effect. So for example, we can just put in the basic solid surface. I'm gonna change it to pixel unit so that it's easier to see. What happened here is you shift the X position by 64 pixel. As you adjust the position property here, you will see that the output will start moving around. Now, one thing to take note of is that the coordinate in the displacement map is being inverted. So in Pixel Composer, the top left of your image is 0, 0. The X increase as you move to the right, and the Y increase as you go down. You can see the coordinate of your current pixel in this area. Right, as you can see, as you move around to the right, your X increase, and as you move down, your Y increase. But with displacement node, the actual pixel movement is an invert of that. So when you say move position by positive 10, you will actually move by negative X. Now this is nothing special. This is just basic transformation. The interesting effects will happen when you provided a different displacement map. So we're going to use gradient. And when I plug the gradient input in, your image will start to distorted. We use the same concept in Pixel Composer where the black color here is represent the 0 values and the white color here represent 1 value. So now when you plug in the gradient as a displacement map, you're gonna see that the white pixel, I'm gonna draw the middle line here, right? In the white pixel, in the area with white pixel, it will move the most, right? And then it's gonna move less and less and less and less until the middle point. And as it get darker and darker, it will move in an inward position. The reason why the middle point here is the place where there is no movement because we set the mid value property. This is the property that controls where the origin point of the movement is, and the default value here is 0.5. So it's gonna treat the 0.5 here, 0.5 gray here as an origin point, as a fixed point, right? As you change the mid value here, if I set it to 0, then it's gonna treat 0 or the black area as the origin point, and the brighter it gets, the more displacement is gonna happen. This also explains why the displacement amount is not as big as you expected. In this example, I reset the midpoint to 0.5 and the position here is 16 pixels, and each of these cells in the preview panel here is 8 pixels. But you will see area with the highest color here, the one area here, only move by 8 pixels, not 16 pixels. Or if you're gonna plug in the solid color, you will see the entire thing only move by 8 pixels, and that's because we set midpoint at 0.5, right? So the full bright, the one level here, actually only have 0.5 effect, and the black area here would also have negative 0.5 effect. Now so far the example we have are pretty basic. The way you would actually use this node is you might want to plug in a more random, more interesting surface in a displacement map. Like in the example, so we're gonna use early noise. As I plug it in, you're gonna see that now our image look weird, right? It distorted in a less expected way. Now one thing to note of the displacement node is that displace node will maintain the tileable property of your surface. So the Perlin noise here is tileable, and our line shapes here is also fairly tileable vertically, right? So when you plug it in displace node, the output will stay tileable. Another thing too is the oversampling mode. When you change the position so high that the pixels start to go over the surface boundary, by default, you will see that the pixel will actually wrap back. This kind of behavior when the pixel go out of the surface, we call it oversampling. So in the attribute section here, or in your global project setting, you will see that the property is oversampled that you can change. By default, it is a repeat XY. And this is what exactly happens. It will repeat or it will wrap back to make sure that your final image is still tileable. However, sometimes you don't want that. You can just change the oversampling setting either to empty, so it just completely disappear. Another thing you can do is clamp, but we're gonna talk about that later. Now, so far, I already talking about the linear displacement mode. It means that every single pixel in the screen will displace in the same linear line. The displacement map here only control the amplitude, the amount of movement. But if you want each pixel in the original image here move in a different vector, then we can change the displacement mode. Here we have 4 different modes. The first one is a vector mode. Now this vector mode, it will utilize the 2 channels in your surface. The surface we have, I think I already talked about how every pixel here consists of the 4 numbers, right? R, G, B, A. In the preview panel here, you will have this channel selected. You can see like the red, green, blue, or alpha. And what the vector mode does is it's gonna take the first 2 channels, the red and green channels, and then use it to control the displacement in X and Y axis. So how does it work? We're gonna use the RGB combine node. So this RGBA combine or RGB combine will allow you to provide one surface each for the red and green and blue and alpha channels. This gives us more control over each individual individual colors, each individual channels. Like if I plug in draw gradient here in the red channel, you're gonna see that the output will be completely red. And again, the red values encode the x-axis. If I plug this to the output, I will also reset the mid value to 0 as well. Adjust the strength, you will see that it will now only move object in the x-axis. And the same concept, if we drag only in the green, then it will only move the pixel in the y-axis. Now I just talked about how I want our surface to move out, right? Maybe you want it to have maybe like some ripple effect where a pixel move away from the center point. If we're gonna use x and y axis, we can do that. It can be a little bit annoying because then we have to do like, trigonometry to get the x, y in each of the angles. Luckily, the displacement also comes with a mode that deal with the polar coordinate, which is the next mode, the angle mode. In this mode, it will work similar to the vector, so it's still gonna use the red and the green channel of your surface, but instead of just map the red to x movement and the green to y movement, it will map red channel to the angle, right? Basically the angle of the movement here, and the green channel will map to the strength, the distance. Sometimes we call it theta and r. So you basically only have to provide direction and distance instead of x and y. And it can be useful in this case when we wanted to have like a vary direction. But what kind of displacement map do we need? Like I said, I wanted to have some kind of different direction per each surface, right? In the same line here, it should have the same direction, right? But then it have to decrease or increase as you rotate. So what you want is like a radial gradient. So let's make a gradient, and then we're gonna set the type to radial. Then we get something like this. Now we can try to plug in directly, but the output will not be what you expected because again, we want only red channels to have these radial properties, right? We're gonna call back the RGB combine and plug this to red. Now you see nothing, right? Because the strength, the radius here is 0. There's no green value in here. So let's just connect, maybe in this case, just basic solid white to the green channels. Our image completely disappear, probably because the strength is too high. As we decrease the strength, you will see that our surface is back. And as you can see, the pixel here, it does move away from the middle point. And you can see here, it become like bloated, it become bigger, right? Now the hole in the middle here is because it's just sampling outside the surface, because we use the same intensity, we use a solid white for every single surface. To fix that, we can also change it so that the closer it is to the original point, the less displacement it will do, which is basically like a circular gradient, right? Right, so now we have this new surface where the middle here only have 0, and the goal all the way here is to 1. And as I change the green value to this one, as you can see, the hole in the middle disappear. Now, one thing for both vector and angle mode, there's this option to separate axis. Maybe you just want to plug in a grayscale image directly to the x and the y axis. You can enable the separate axis toggle, and then you can just plug in individual surface for each of them, and it will work the same. So one less node to worry about. And then we have the last displacement mode, which is a gradient. Right? The gradient here refers to the slope from the white pixel to the black pixel. Like in this example, the gradient of this image is actually like an arrow down, go from bright pixel to dark pixel. So when I plug it into displace map and I adjust the strength, you will see that if we just move surface up and down in y-axis, basically gonna have the pixel follow the gradient of the input displace map. But in this gradient, the gradient actually go in like circle shape, right? So you plug it in, now you are moving, displacing pixel in this circular shape. And with a more complex image, right, as you plug it in as a displace map, you will start to create some random complex effect from your image. So you can also do the period effect where you offset the pixel radially using the gradient mode as well. You just want to create a surface where it go from white in the middle and go away, darker in radial shape, which in this case is just a gradient. But then we invert it, now you plug it in, you will see that you will be doing similar things. As you change the strength, the pixel will start expanding away from the middle point. Now I'm going to show you some example of what you can do with this displace node. Because let me say again, this node is really fun and it's like the backbone of many of the effects. You should try to use it, plug in random surface to see what it does. Now for the example, I'm just going to show you how to create a basic file effect using displacement. And the first thing I want is a gradient, because I want a file that like go from bottom up, right? So I want to have a gradient and then rotate it 90 degrees like this, so that when I connect it to the colorize, I can create like some file effect, right? But we're gonna do that later. Now I'm gonna put it in displacement mode, and I'm just gonna put in some random noise, like a poly noise like this, and plug it in. Now I'm gonna set it back to the basic linear mode, and I'm gonna set the oversampling to repeat for now to show you what happens by default when I adjust the y-axis. So you will start to see some movement. You can already plug it in colorize, I guess. But the first thing you'll notice is that what is this white thing? Well, it's again the oversampling mode, right? The white pixel here overflow out and then wrap all the way back down to the bottom. We can set it to empty. It's just gonna become empty pixel. But we don't want that either. We want it to be black, right? We want everything below black to stay black and everything that go above white to stay white. And that is basically the clamp effect. So we go to the oversampling and set it set to clamp. The black area here will stay black and the white area up here will stay white. The next thing you will notice is that the pixel shift up and you increase the strength or increase the Y position. That's because our mid value here is set to 0. This is not the default value, right? The default value is 0.5, but this is what happens when you set it to 0. It basically just gonna shift all pixel up and you're gonna left with no detail. That's why the default value for the midpoint is 0.5. In this way, you will still have some information left because the back pixel here will just push down and the white one will push up. And we're gonna adjust the position down a bit. But you can already see some kind of fire effect or fire pattern happening here. Now, if I want the flame to be a little bit more pronounced, you can plug it in the level node and then crank the white in down. As you can see here, the boundary here become a bit sharper. And even crank it the black level up if you want to have more of this darker red area. You can also plug it into the posterized node as well, give it a more pixel art look. Now our file doesn't have a lot of detail because our displacement node doesn't have a lot of detail. So let's just go and maybe increase the iteration or maybe increase the scale a little bit. Now we got some fire effect, right? And again, because the displacement node, they keep the tiling properties. So our output here would also tileable as well. Now I want to animate it. I want the file to go upward like burning. So we can go to the position here and then we can start giving it keyframe. Then at the end here, give it 1. Oh, that's the wrong direction. And now our flame is moving upward, right? Maybe it's a little bit too low. I'm gonna go to the level. We're gonna adjust it a bit so that we can see the range of all color, right? Now, next thing you notice is that, okay, maybe the size of each band is a little bit too uniform, right? And that's because our original gradient here is just a linear gradient. So maybe we can give it some of the curve. So we can plug in the curve node in the middle here and then adjust some curve. As you can see, if we adjust the curve, the size of each band relative to each other start to change. Maybe something like this now, we have a little bit of a shorter band in the bottom here and longer band in the top, right? And this is a very basic fire effect. And then you can also modify the input surface a little bit more, right? You can apply some shapes to it. And now you can start maybe like blending or multiplying your surface with different shapes. So now your flame will look different. And this is not just fire, right? You can also use it to simulate or generate cloud pattern as well. Some noisy shapes or maybe trees. This is just for example. Another thing that you can do with displacement node is some glitch effect. You can imagine we have a shape like this. And if we maybe like displace some part of it in a block shape like this, right? Displace away, displaces away. If we can create some glitch effect. Even better if we can displace each of the red, green and blue channels separately. So let's try to do that. We're gonna have some basic shapes and we're gonna plug it in this place. And now we want a pattern that consists of like a rectangular block with different colors. So we're gonna need maybe a grid. And in the tie color here, just gonna give it gradient, just the size. Remove the gap and add some random shifting, maybe even random scale. Now as I plug it into the displacement, maybe reduce the position a bit, make it even smaller. Right, and as you shuffle the grid color, you're gonna see that how glitch effects start to work. Maybe a bit too much, but still. Now, if we want to apply the glitch effect to like multiple channels at once, you can do that. We can have like 3 different grids and then we randomize it, right? And then we put it in array using the Ctrl+Shift+A hotkey. Right now we have an array of 3 surfaces and then we plug it in the displacement map. And now we're gonna have 3 images with different displacement. And we're gonna use RGB combine to combine each of these values to the red, green, and blue channels. In the surface option here, we can toggle on the array input. Oh, and don't forget to set the sampling type to grayscale. And now we have some interesting looking glitch, right? What if you want to have more control over the strength? What if you want maybe glitch out some part of the image, right? Not the full image. Then we can do that. We can just put in another grid. This time I want it to have bigger size. Again, we're gonna give it random tie color. And now we're gonna plug it into the strength properties. The strength property here, it accepts surface. You may notice that in the property box here, you're gonna see this icon at the end. If you mouse over it, you're gonna say toggle map, right? It's a called mappable parameter. So if you see this icon, you can click on it. If you have this new input with the same name, right? We have strength and here we have strength map. If you plug it into some surface and then you adjust the range here, you will see that it will now modulate the values so that the strength property here are different in different part of your image. If the area in the map is 0, it's gonna be mapped to here. If the area in the map here is white, it's gonna map to here and everything in between. And maybe increase the maximum displacement. You can also plug it in threshold, the brightness threshold, which would just convert this grayscale image to black and white completely. So now we're gonna have an area that have no displacement at all and an area that only have full displacement. Another thing you could do is you can just give it gradient and you can move around here. You can see the amount of distortion also change. Maybe play around with it for a bit and you may be able to come up with something weird and interesting, right? Now the last example I'm gonna show you is what happens if you plug in the same surface in both the input and the displacement map. So we're gonna have the basic polynomial like this with low iteration and then a displace node, right? Now what do you think will happen when I try to change the y position here? Right, with the concept that we learned so far, you will say that, well, the white area here will move up or down by a lot, right? Like, let's assume that we want it to move up. The white area here will move up, right? The gray will move a little bit less. The black will not move at all. So it should maybe create some kind of like mountain, where the white area here become big mountain and it becomes smaller mountain, smaller mountain. That might be kind of interesting. So let's do that. Increasing the position offset. Okay, well that's kind of works. You can see that it kind of move a bit until some point where it just become a mess. So maybe we want to set the midpoint to 0 because right now the black part also go down, right? If we set the midpoint to completely 0, now the black part should be staying the same and only the white pixel should move up or down. And okay, it's kind of work, but it also kind of not, right? To some point we start to have like this black area start to show up out of nothing when it's supposed to be black. Right, when the black part are supposed to move, it still kind of move to some degree. Maybe because it's not completely black, maybe because there's some gray in there, maybe because there's a white area that move upwards, right? And I don't know what color to pick there. But the first problem you see, let's just face the most obvious one first, is the banding, right? You can see here there's some clear banding. It's because we set the pixel interpolation to pixel, right? In project setting here, the interpolation set to pixel. And note here, we use inherit types. So it just means that there will be no interpolation between pixels. It will not blend between the two colors in the middle. So to fix that, we can just change interpolation to anything else but pixel. So let's say bilinear. Immediately, the banding disappears. But we still haven't fixed the unexpected black area though. And that's because when we do displacement normally, we simply just take the original pixel point and we just move it directly all in one go. Based on the position value here, we just move it all in one step. The better idea is maybe to break down this movement into a smaller step, right? And in each step, you just set in the maximum brightness, right? So that the black area here doesn't creep in to the already white area or already like a higher slope. And this is where the iterate option comes in. This option, I think, just being fixed in the latest nightly. If you turn it on, it's gonna look weird, right? There's some computation error there. So you have to wait until I think 1.21 or 1.20.6 in those newer version or in the nightly build. If you enable the iterate, then there should not be any change. Right now, all it does is instead of just moving the pixel all in one step, it just moved, in this case, 16 steps, right? So the result image here still look the same. But what it gives you is it gives you control over what to do in each step. Like in this blend mode, I can change it to maximum. Now what it does, it's just gonna keep, like I said before, it's just gonna keep the maximum brightness in each sub-step. And as you increase the strength, increase the position values here, you can see that the black area doesn't creep into the white area. So you can crank the height up a bit more. Another property that you can control here is the repetition. This is a little bit different from the iteration. With iteration, we're gonna keep the same strength. We just move it in a smaller step multiple times. But with repetition here, you basically just do the same effect twice. So the strength will multiply. The reposition here just means that in each sub-step, it's gonna resample the strength from the displace map to calculate the new displacement. You can see this is what happened without the reposition. When you turn on the reposition, things become more intense. So again, this is just the kind of stuff that you have to play around with, right? And this should be all I want to talk about the displacement node. So yeah, I hope it is useful for you. Thank you everyone for watching, and special thanks for all the Patreon supporters, and see you in the next one.